What is up, YouTube? My name is Alex. Welcome back to the Lifting Nomad. As you guys know, I've been living in Mexico City the last little bit, and today I want to talk about my experience, what it's like to live in the city, what it's like to live in Mexico in 2023, my opinion on it, safety, budget, cost, nightlife, fitness culture, food, all that good stuff. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So, what's it like to live in Mexico in 2023? I've been traveling through South America for the last 4 months or so. Started in Argentina, went to Uruguay, Lima, Mexico City, and Colombia next. And for me, Mexico was a very surprising time to stay there. So I was in Mexico City, staying in the Condesa neighborhood. And for me, it was actually a really, really positive experience. I think from the previous times I've been to Mexico, where I was in like Cancun and Playa del Carmen and Cozumel, they were very good, but they're very touristy, and you don't really, I don't think, get that sense of what true Mexican culture is about. So we did some really cool things, like the Xochimilco boats, where essentially you get in these like kind of like gondola boats from Venice, you know, where they like paddle you around, but they're a little bit bigger. And we had a group of like 35-ish people, I would say, across these two boats. And they basically push you up and down these rivers, and we had our two boats attached. We had like beers going and music going, and then there's like little michelada boats that are paddling by you that are selling drinks. There's like elotes boats selling food or corn, and it was actually like a really, really cool experience to just be floating up and down the river. I love being on boats my whole life. It's always something I've enjoyed, and that was you know, really a compelling day and a beautiful experience for someone who had never done really that many like Mexican sort of traditions. So it was pretty cool to do that. One of the other things a lot of my group enjoyed was the Piramides de Teotihuacan. Very, very popular to do like the hot air balloons over the pyramids. And I will say this was probably one of the best experiences of my life. It was truly mind-blowingly beautiful. I didn't have my camera, so unfortunately it's not going to be like as nice a quality, but I will show some videos here of what we saw. And we went up there, we took a ride from our apartments in Condesa to the Teotihuacan, and it was, I would say, like an hour-ish drive, maybe 45 minutes away from the downtown at that time of day. And we got there, I would say, just after 6 a.m. when they're just like blowing up the balloons. And it was really, really cool experience watching that. There's like music going, coffee going. And then we got into this really, really big hot air balloon basket. There's 20 of us in there plus a pilot. And then you float up in the air, and it's a really interesting experience because you're moving pretty quickly actually. But because there's no motor or engine, once the hot air balloon, like, you're kind of just floating basically. So it's an interesting sensation where you're moving really, really fast, but there's no engine, there's no really reason for you to be floating other than just like the wind pushing you, which is kind of cool. And then as soon as like the sun was coming up, we got to like pop champagne at sunrise, which was amazing. And we're like just up there like having a couple cocktails, and it was really a beautiful day. I would highly recommend that. If you're ever in Mexico City, that would be the true standout event, I think, of my time here. I couldn't recommend that more. It was a beautiful day, and I'm very fortunate to have done it and would do it again in a heartbeat. After the hot air balloons, we went actually to the pyramids themselves. There's like the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon, and they have like this Avenue of the Dead, and there's a lot of like street vendors selling like obsidians. There's a volcano near there, so there's like a lot of like obsidian glass sort of products and knickknacks, and it was really, really fun. I wasn't like super enthused with, there's a ton of like street vendors actually in the pyramids, like right around them, selling like, it's basically shit in my opinion. So it kind of took away from the experience. And then obviously there was just like a ton of tourists, a ton of people there in general. But overall it was kind of cool to see, and they're the third largest pyramids in the world, which is cool. Actually the biggest ones are also very close there. I think they're 90 kilometers away from Teotihuacan, and then the other ones obviously being in Egypt. And it's really cool to see some of the architecture and designs that are like, you know, hundreds and hundreds of years old, and architecturally you don't really get to see that very much. So that was an amazing experience. Highly, highly recommend. We also did like the luchador event, where we got to go to like the luchador wrestling event, where you're like having beers, and it's kind of like WWE, but like, you know, C tier or D tier. So like everyone's got like the luchador masks. Like imagine like Rey Mysterio basically like fighting other Rey Mysterios for the whole night. Super, super fun. Highly recommend that. So in terms of like actual culture events, it was super cool to do some pretty unique things down here. The experience itself, as someone who is, you know, I obviously don't look Mexican, I'm Canadian. I had a different experience here than I did in Argentina. Argentinians look very white in general, so it's super easy for me to just blend in and not really be targeted. I think Mexico is obviously a little bit more noticeable that I was a tourist, but at the same time, my Spanish is fairly good, so I always try to communicate in Spanish first, and then if there's ever like a breakdown, I flip over to English if I can. But I definitely got treated like very, very well. The Mexican people were extremely friendly and accommodating in times when like other people in my group couldn't speak Spanish. They were super open to it and open to like practicing their English or like really being patient with us on our Spanish. The food scene was obviously incredible. Like some of the best restaurants in the world are in Mexico City. It's a massive place, so they have pretty much every kind of cuisine you could possibly want. If you wanted to Rappi something, you could just get it delivered to your door very cheaply and very like amazing. Like they have everything from sushi to Peruvian ceviche to wings to pizza to burgers to like 1,000 Mexican restaurants within like every single block. And the food was absolutely incredible. I will say the Montezuma's Revenge was pretty potent amongst our group. I've been in South America, like I said, last few months, so it wasn't actually as noticeable for me. I didn't have any incidents, let's say, where I was worried that I wasn't gonna make it. It was really, really simple for me. I didn't have any real stomach issues at all throughout the time I was being there. And I ate like street food and taco carts and pretty much everything you can think of. So I would say if you have been traveling a bit, I would doubt you're gonna have too many issues. It's not like Mexico specifically is that bad for that. I think just a lot of South American countries have just different food standards than like USA or Canada. So sometimes when you travel down here, it can be kind of a shock to your system to get used to, but after the first few weeks, usually that goes away and then you're good to go. In terms of safety, I think Mexico City was really, really safe, at least in the neighborhoods we were in. If you go into like Centro, it's pretty hectic, and that's kind of like the Mexico City you see in the news with just like thousands and thousands of people everywhere running all over. There's cars everywhere and noise and bikes and just like pure chaos. That's still there, but at least in the places you're likely going to be staying as a tourist in Condesa, Roma Norte, or Polanco, or Roma Sur, or Hipodromo, you're likely going to be fine. And it's just like pretty tranquilo. Actually, it reminded me a lot of Buenos Aires when I was in Mexico City. So I think safety-wise, we didn't really have any concerns at all. Obviously, like don't be an idiot. Don't worry wearing a Rolex out with like white jeans and a floral shirt, at 4 a.m. drunk off your ass walking down the street. You're gonna be a target no matter which Latin American country. I mean, you're gonna be a target even in the US or even Canada, maybe not Canada, if you're wearing something like that. So obviously be cognizant of your surroundings, try to blend in as best you can and try not to dress like too much obnoxiousness, and you'll be totally fine from a safety point of view. In terms of cost, I would say it's not really that big of a saver. Mexico City is very accessible from most of the United States. You have kind of flights running all the time from most major cities like New York, Miami, Chicago, Boston, really you name it. They pretty much have a flight to Mexico City because that airport is massive and it's relatively close. Like the Houston city in Texas is like, I'd say less than an hour and a half flight away from Mexico City, like very, very close. So there's a ton of Americans that go down there, and I think that's kind of why the prices reflect it. I would say from my experience of being like from Toronto, which is obviously very, very expensive, it was about like 30% cheaper maybe, but that's, for Latin America, that's really not that much of a savings. So definitely be cognizant of how much you're spending and maybe have a budget and a plan for how much money you actually want to spend while you're traveling down there. But overall, the cost was, not really that great of a savings, I'll be honest. In terms of like nightlife and vibes and just like lifestyle, it doesn't really have too much of a fitness culture. I think like Medellin, I remember, was a little bit more like health conscious, I think, and it was easier to get like better food, and there was more gyms, and Buenos Aires, I think, had that as well. But Mexico City, not to say there's not people in shape, and don't get me wrong here, don't try and misinterpret me. It just was a little bit difficult to find like healthier restaurants and like health food choices. I eat like a lot of like chicken and vegetables like everyone else who's in shape, and it was a lot of restaurants just have like a lot of fat and cooked with a lot of oil. So you do have to be aware of how many calories you're actually consuming. The gyms themselves were a pretty good selection of everything from like a CrossFit to like a weightlifting gym to classes like F45 or Orange Theory. Like they had a good variety. So really whatever your kind of vice is for fitness, I think you'd be able to find something that would fit the bill for you there. I was training at the SmartFit in Roma Norte. I went to also the SmartFit in Condesa, but they're notoriously like really small and kind of a lot of like people in the space. So it can be difficult to get like a good workout in when you're basically like tripping over other people. So try to keep in mind, maybe do some research ahead of time, find out which gyms are close to your neighborhood, and then make a decision whether you want to stay there or potentially like move to a closer place for a gym. In terms of accessibility, it's a very walkable city, like because most of the neighborhoods where tourists go, like Roma Norte, Condessa, Hippodromo, Roma Sur, it's pretty big between all that, and it's all extremely walkable. They're all like just flat streets, low-rise buildings, a lot of restaurants, bars, cafes, all the way along there. And it's very, very easy to walk and get around. There's grocery stores and kioscos and supermarkets kind of everywhere, fruit stands. You are gonna need some cash because a lot of like the fruit stands and taco carts don't actually take card, obviously because they're setting up like pop-ups every single day. But it's very easy to get food and move around in the neighborhood. So I think accessibility-wise, it's very, very easy. That being said, if you do like require some sort of mobility concern, the streets are not level. Like the sidewalks are pretty chaotic and they're like broken up in a lot of places. So it may be difficult to actually like walk smoothly. But other than that, I think ultimately Mexico City was an amazing time and I had a great experience there. I would be going back. I would recommend anyone to go there as well. I would say take like the 6 months or so before you go and sign up for like a tutor with Preply for Spanish classes. I think it helps a lot and it makes a world of difference. As someone who's been to a lot of Spanish speaking countries when I didn't speak any, like zero, and now being able to converse, the experience is very different. Like it's almost night and day. People treat you differently. You're able to have more like honest and genuine conversations, I think. Like servers give you more leeway. People like in the gym or on the street just give you more politeness, right? Because you're able to, like you've shown like you're putting the effort and you're actually giving the respect that it deserves to the locals. So I think that makes a huge difference. Highly, highly recommend learning Spanish before you come down to Mexico, but not the end of the world if you're not like super fluent. I'm definitely not fluent, but I can get by when I need to. So that's my kind of summary. But that's gonna be pretty much the video. I think overall it was an awesome city. I would be super, super thrilled to go back, and it's very accessible to even go for like a long weekend from most of North America. So I realize Mexico's in North America, I just mean like USA or Canada. But with that being said, this is gonna be the end of the video. Hopefully this was useful and gave you a little bit of insight into my experience living in Mexico the last little bit. But yeah, that's gonna be the video. Hopefully it was useful. If it was, feel free to leave a like or comment in the section below. Always helps the algorithm. If you haven't subscribed, turn on that notification bell. Please do so right now. Other than that, my name's Alex. Welcome back to Lifting Nomad. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.